to my channel. My name is Anna, aka Brookwillow, and today we're gonna have a little spin and chat. I've been filming on YouTube for about 1.5 years, actually more like coming up on 2 years, and I've never done a Q&A style video. I've put in like a little nuggets here and there of information about myself, but I thought it would be fun to have you viewers ask me questions and I will answer them while I attempt to spin. I'm a little nervous because usually when I spin, especially on my wheel, I'm alone with like headphones on or something and I'm not talking to people and I'm really focused. So this is going to be a good challenge for me. And also, I'm gonna try to insert another portion of the video of me like live spinning from my phone. So it's gonna be a little bit of a learning curve trying to figure out how to kind of sync those two up together. So if you don't see that, it means it didn't work out, but hopefully it does. So with that, let's try to figure it out. To start out with talking about what I'll be spinning, this lovely fiber here, which is from Hello Yarn, the monthly subscription. And this is January's colorway, which is called... The colorway is called Bright Spot and it's limited edition American wool blend top. So this is part of a pretty big spin that I'm doing. If you haven't watched my channel before, you may not know that I'm actually spinning up all of the different monthly colorways from Hello Yarn to make Andrea Mowry's night shift shawl. And so it's kind of like a mystery knit along for me because I don't know what colors I'm going to be getting, but obviously I know what pattern I'm going to be knitting. So far it's been super fun. If you want to check out some past colorways that I've spun up, just feel free to check out my recent videos from probably the last 4 months, I think, is when I really started spinning it all up. So yeah. As far as the questions go, I asked on my last video for people to submit questions in the comments below, and I also put a little poll on Instagram, so that's where these questions are coming from. And I've split them up into 2 categories. The first category that I'll go over is more fiber-related questions, and then the second half of the questions are more personal questions about my life. So without further ado, let's get into it, and I'm first just going to get this all set up. The way that I'm going to be spinning this fiber is a 3-ply fractal spun, and the way that I've been doing it is just dividing the entire length of the fiber into thirds. It's about thirds, and then I cut it into those thirds. I don't know if cutting is like the right protocol for this, but it works for me. And then I just pick out a braid or a segment and I set the other 2 aside, and then I just spin right from end to end, each on a single ply. I'm trying to make about a worsted weight yarn with a 3-ply, so basically my goal, because I'm still pretty new at spinning, I just started last summer, is to just spin it like as thin as I can, but not too thin, and as consistent as I can. And I'm pretty sure the way that I do it is like a long draw woolen spun, but correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, I'm also a little nervous because I don't normally have people watching me spin, so please don't be too hard on me if I'm doing weird things. But what I'm creating is turning out to what I want it to be, so I guess it doesn't really matter how I'm doing it. I don't know. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get it all loaded up on here. So what do we got going on? Also, my wheel is like really dirty. It produces so much oil similar to like a bike with bike chains does. And it's a little bit harder to clean off because this is wood compared to a bike. And so I feel like a lot of the oils just kind of stain it, which kind of sucks. I don't know, maybe one day I'll just like actually stain all the wood so it doesn't absorb as much oil. But what do you all spinners do to clean your wheel? Because I know like spinning yarn lately has been a hot topic, but I haven't really heard anyone talk about cleaning their wheel yet, so that would be a good topic for any of you YouTubers out there. Maybe I could make one too, but I don't know, maybe one day. So yeah, I'm just gonna get it started. I usually just pre-draft a little bit. I don't know if you can see this far back based on where my phone is set up, but yeah, let's oh, of course it's being funky. Oh yeah, I need to set this up. There we go. Oh, I have stage fright. There we go. Now we're talking. And I'm gonna set this up and then we'll jump into the questions. I also haven't really spun for a little while, for like, I kind of want to say the last 3 weeks. I've been super busy. Last weekend I went up north with my friends. We went up near Grand Marais, Minnesota. That's where that opening footage is from that I'm sure I'll put in the video. It was so beautiful. My one friend, she has a tiny cabin, and it doesn't have like electricity, just like a little small propane heater. And they got so much snow up there, and it was really funny trying to hike all of our stuff in, but it was really beautiful and nice. The North Shore is usually super busy, but going in February, it almost felt like we had the entire place to ourselves, which was really nice. Okay, I think I've got it going a little bit. Okie doke. So I'm gonna pull up the first question. Okay, the first question is, how did you get started with knitting? Did someone teach you or did you learn on your own? I've definitely, I think, mentioned this in the past. I first learned to start knitting when I was a child. I think I was like 8 or 9 years old, I would guess. It's kind of funny because I remember being in like an after school daycare program in elementary school, and I asked one of the people for like 2 needles and thread, and they were like, okay. And I just tried like teaching myself to knit, and it didn't end up being anything because I didn't even know where to begin, and I was using needles and thread. That's not gonna really get you what you want starting out. So then eventually I told my grandma that I wanted to learn, and she took me to the craft store and we picked out some needles and some yarn, and I still remember the yarn that I picked out. It was like this like deep turquoise, I'm sure it was acrylic, shiny yarn, and she taught me how to knit. And I remember when I first was doing it, the little swatch that I was making started exponentially like growing, and that's because I thought I had to wrap the yarn around the needle twice, and So I was just doubling the stitches every single time. But eventually I figured out what I was doing wrong, thanks to my grandma. And then I just proceeded to knit like garter stitch scarves for like 10 years. And then after that, I decided I think it's time to start learning new techniques. So I learned a lot, pretty much everything on YouTube. It's amazing how many videos there are, especially now compared to like 10 years ago when I started to really try to advance my knitting. One of the beautiful things about YouTube. Yeah, and then I think I got like super into it maybe 3 years ago. I kick myself because, no, I guess it'd be like 2 years ago. I got furloughed during lockdown for COVID, and I didn't work for 4 months, and I didn't knit once in those 4 months. I'm so mad at myself. Like, imagine the amount of knitting I could have gotten done. I was crocheting quite a bit though. I started making a bunch of granny squares in hopes of making a blanket. I still have all of those granny squares, but I have not pieced it together into a blanket. But it really was the introduction of knitting podcasts that kind of reignited my love for knitting. And eventually led me to start my own channel. I think the first couple ones that I found were Bee Mandarins and then The Gentle Knitter, both who aren't really filming so much anymore, and I miss them dearly. But yeah, that just catapulted it, and now it's just completely taken over my life for the best. Okay, next question. Can you walk us through your process for choosing yarn for a project? Do you prioritize color, texture, or other factors? I think this is a really good question. One that I never really sat down to think about too much, but definitely one I realized that I really do have a way of going about choosing yarn. And for me, it 100% starts with the color. I just love color so much. It's so important, and it really brings out the different moods of different garments that I'm making. Especially recently, since I've been making mood boards, I've been trying to kind of stick with colors within the mood, and that way I don't end up with like crazy garments that just don't really go with anything. And then the second is probably the fiber and the weight. Obviously I want to stick with a weight that is correct for the project. And as far as the fiber goes, like, yeah, I want a fiber that makes sense as well. So knitting with winter garments, so making sweaters for winter, I definitely want to stick with wool, especially because I live in western Wisconsin, and it gets very cold in the winter. I don't really want to have cotton sweaters. And then in the summer, on the other end of the spectrum, it gets really hot here. It can easily, like our summers, it feels like we have like one good day of just perfect weather, and then it just gets scorching hot and humid. So I definitely need to make sure, like if I'm making tank tops and stuff, using linen or cotton or other plant fibers that just breathe a little bit easier than wool. I'm gonna oil my wheel really quick and let out the dog, one of the dogs, because I don't want it to get too squeaky for you guys. So we're gonna pause real quick. Okay, speaking of oil, what do you all use to oil your wheel? I've had this bottle of argan oil for a long time that I've been using. I honestly don't know if there's anything specific you should be using, but I also use the argan oil in my hair too, and I don't know where I put it. Ever since I went up north, I I lost my favorite clip and my hair oil. So today I'm going to be using some face oil from The Ordinary to oil my wheel. So I just put 1 drop on each of the little metal bits, and that usually does the trick. So yeah, let me know if there's specific oil I should be using because I have not done my research on it clearly, but maybe that's contributing to why my wheel is so dirty, but it definitely makes a world of a difference. I don't know if you can hear, but this is like 10 times quieter just from those 2 drops, and it's going so much smoother too. I also always forget to move my little driver. I'm trying to get really good at making pretty bobbins to take pictures of, but they always get like hills and valleys and wonky and all of that, but we're getting better. Okay, next question. Have you ever had any knitting disasters or projects that didn't turn out the way you had hoped? I have had a lot of knitting disasters, especially in the earlier days when I wasn't swatching, I wasn't paying attention to dye lots, but I would say the biggest disaster was my Cafe Facet carpet coat. And if you have been following along since my first or second episode, you will know all about this. So I bought a Cafe Facet book, Glorious Knits. It was published in like the 1980s. It's incredible. It's a little treasure chest full of really cool knitting patterns. But I wanted to make the carpet coat, and when I first made it, I don't know what needle size I used, but the needles were definitely way too big and the fabric was way too loose or holey. Like the gauge was just too big. And I didn't really decide that I needed to switch to a smaller needle until I knit the entire back of it. So it was like months of knitting, and I ended up having to rip the whole thing out. I think that was actually also the first reel I ever made, was just me in fast motion ripping out this huge cardigan. That definitely was really sad. In my defense, I don't even think they listed the gauge in the book, and they also, it was like a 1 size, so I don't know, but I probably, now if I were to do it again, I would have known if the fabric was just too loose for what I wanted it to be. And I hate to say it, like I'm still not 100% happy with it. There's a few different things. I used all different brands of yarn, and if I were to go back, I would probably just use 1 brand of yarn. So it was all like very consistent. And I also, it's still just like a little too big, even though I shortened it like a ton from the original pattern. But then one of my viewers was like, did you ever consider just using smaller yarn and a smaller gauge? And I'm like, you know what? For some reason I didn't ever consider that. And part of me almost wants to make it again using much thinner yarn and smaller needles, because it calls for chunky weight. So I think it would be kind of fun to do like a worsted weight. And that would significantly shrink up the size to a point where I probably could wear it like out in the world. Right now it's kind of great because it's acting like a snuggie, so I still wear it all the time at home. I can wrap my entire body up in it, and then since it has the sleeves, I can still use my hands to like knit or whatever. So it's definitely getting use, but it's something that I wish I could wear in the world. So maybe, just maybe, I will knit that one again, but I also have like a ton of other projects planned, so who knows if I'll ever get to it. All right, next question. How did you get into spinning, and how does the process compare for you? I think the first, how did I want to get into spinning? I don't know. I feel like it's just something that I always wanted to do. And then when I was up in Grand Marais with one of my best friends, we went to the little knitting shop up there, Dappled Fern Fibers. Very cute knitting shop, by the way. And they had little drop spindles for sale. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna get a drop spindle. They were only 20 bucks. And it was something that I was interested in doing. And the rest is history. Here we are now. I remember I got a like braid of Malabrigo Nube back in town at the yarnery. Marshall, you don't need to be right in front of this. Come on, get back. I got a braid of Nube from the yarnery, and then I just started spinning. And I actually used that first fiber I spun in the Cafe Facet coat, the carpet coat. That would be kind of a fun big spin, spinning up the yarn to make the carpet coat. Uh-oh, I think I know what another big spinning project I have is. Yeah, and that actually leads me nicely into the next question, which is, how much would you say needs to be invested to start a spinning hobby? And I know that the drop spindle I got, I think was about $20. It didn't have like a brand on it or anything, but I just went and looked at the Woolery and they have some for $12.99, and I'll link it below if you're interested. And then I know a braid of Nube is like $16.99, so you could start the hobby in under $30. And I really do recommend starting with a drop spindle before jumping fully into spinning with a wheel. I think it's just like a really great way to kind of like understand the basics of spinning without investing too much, to see if you even really like it. And then with some practice, eventually getting a wheel would definitely be great. And learning on the wheel was pretty hard too, but I was happy that, again, I had the basics of drafting and all of that under my belt using the drop spindle. And I still really do like working with the drop spindle. It's really nice for when I'm going camping. I like to bring it with because it's just obviously so portable and a great way to like still socialize while spinning yarn. And as far as learning, I learned on YouTube. So I think I watched like a Jillian Eve tutorial on how to spin with a drop spindle. I actually saw that Kristen from Volenvine just released a tutorial on how to do a top whirl drop spindle as well. So there are plenty of resources out there on how to learn. And actually I learned how to use the wheel from YouTube as well. I can't remember who it was because I searched for my specific wheel, which by the way is the Ashford Kiwi 3, if you're wondering. Yeah, I looked up a specific tutorial on how to use this wheel to learn. And then it was a lot of practice to get to a point where I was happy with what I was producing. The nice thing is though, I still used the yarn that I was practicing on, I used my first skein I ever made to make a trapper hat that I talked about in a few episodes ago. So even if the yarn doesn't turn out like perfectly even, it still will knit up really nice. Knitting is very forgiving to what the yarn looks like, so don't be too intimidated by that. So the last fiber related question is, how do you balance your knitting, sewing, spinning hobbies with the rest of your personal and professional life? I think this is a really good question, especially because I feel like I really do have a lot of little offshoot hobbies. So I knit, obviously, and spin, and I sew. And I started dyeing yarn now too, so it is actually quite a bit to juggle. I think one of the first things is, specifically for me, is to not have too many knitting projects or whips. I think if I had like 6 whips, I would never really get anything done. So I always try to have, like, I always have at least 1 garment, maybe 2, and then like an accessory, like a shawl maybe, or a hat. And then I always have socks on the go as well. And as far as finding time, I have a lot of free time on my hands. I don't have kids. I have animals, but they don't need like my constant attention. And every morning I start work at 9:30. I work Monday through Thursdays, and I set my alarm for 5:45, and that's to like drink my coffee and knit in the morning. And I've been doing that ever since I quit H&M, because when I was working at H&M, I had to be at work at 6 a.m. every day. And I never got to have a relaxing morning. It was like, wake up, get ready, and go, because it was just so early. And I told myself, like, one thing I wanted to do was just to have a nice, slow morning. And that's really made a huge difference on my life. And since I was so used to waking up early for H&M, I started setting my alarm for 5:45, which is still, like, sleeping in compared to when I would have to get up for H&M. So it's just really nice. Like, I wake up, I make my coffee. Usually, like, Kevin, one of my dogs, comes down, and that's his like morning cuddle time with me. And then that's when I watch most of other YouTube channels too. Like, I watch a ton of knitting YouTube podcasts. And yeah, so I get a lot done during the week doing that. And then after work is more like other things. Like, I take the dogs for long walks. I usually try to do like an exercise, and that's when I cook and stuff too. And then at the end, usually ends up being around like 8 p.m. I sit down and knit and watch TV, usually until like 10 p.m. So I get a lot done during the week. And then on the weekend, it usually is all about fiber and all the fun stuff. That's usually when I'm spinning the most, is on the weekends, and like sewing and stuff. But I also find time for knitting too. And I'm very fortunate because my friends, a lot of them knit or sew or do other crafts. So we usually have a lot of craft nights with each other. Or even if we're just hanging out, like I'll bring my travel project. So usually like socks, something that's just kind of easy to work on while I'm socializing. So yeah, I'm kind of like always knitting, it feels. But I think it really does work out, because yeah, I have a lot of free time for it, and I really like where I'm at in my life and the amount of free time I have for all of these different hobbies that I have. So that kind of segues into more of the personal life questions. The next question is a 3-part question. The first one is, what music are you listening to? And I love this question because I feel like music is such a big part of my life. I played piano as a kid. I took lessons for like 10 years. And I recently just got my piano back from my dad's. Now that I have a house, I have space to have it. So I really want to get back into playing because it's been quite a while since I've played, and I think that would be nice. But I also have to carve out time. I keep choosing knitting over playing piano, so that makes it a little bit challenging. But anyways, back to music that I'm listening to. So yeah, music always been very important. And I've definitely gone through different evolutions of like what I listen to, but they've all been like pretty indie based. And I think currently I've just been really drawn to anything that's in the genre of like indie folk is what I mainly listen to. Some people make fun of me. They're like, oh, it's just like sleepy guitar music that you like, but that's not necessarily true. So a few bands or artists that I've really been enjoying these last few years, I would say, is definitely Big Thief and Kurt Vile, Kevin Morby, a lot of different brands in that kind of genre. And I think it'd be kind of fun to actually put together like maybe a little playlist in the description below. I'm just gonna write out the artists and the songs that I really love. And just because I have Apple Music and I have a feeling that a lot of people have like Spotify, but I don't have Spotify. And so yeah, I'm gonna make a little playlist. If you end up liking the playlist or listening to any of the songs, let me know, because maybe I'll make more in the future too. I really like making playlists. I remember when Mitch and I first started dating, I made him a bunch of playlists to play at the bike shop that he used to work with at, and he, I think, really liked it. And I don't know, just been making a lot of playlists ever since. So yeah, look down below for that. So yeah, 3-part question. The second question is, what am I watching? And there is one specific show on TV that I've been watching and only watching, and that is Vanderpump Rules. If you know, you know. I started from season 1 and I'm now on season 3, so please don't spoil whatever big drama is happening right now that I keep successfully avoiding. But I don't normally watch reality TV shows, but I feel like this winter especially was just like really tough, just because we got so much snow. It was so gray, and I tried watching Last of Us, but the first episode was too scary, so I can't really continue watching that. And my friend Elena, who was on a few videos ago, her and her roommate have been watching Vanderpump Rules, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give that a shot, and I am hooked. Oh my goodness. And now I kind of want to do all of like the Real Housewives and just all of it. And lucky for me, there's just so many seasons that honestly I'd probably be set watching it for the rest of my life. I'm sure I'll get to a point where I don't want to watch that, but right now it's really nice, especially because like I haven't really been in like a go out and party mode for like a few years now, but it's kind of nice to have people do all of that for you while I watch from the comfort of my couch and I knit. It's really nice. So that's what I've been watching. The third part of the question was, do I listen to audiobooks or read? And I used to read physical books a lot, but again, now that I started my life of fiber arts, I can only really successfully listen to books. And I have been listening to a few good books lately. I did the first two of A Court of Thorn and Roses, and then I kind of wanted like a break from that world. And then Maggie from Sonder Knitting Podcast, which is an awesome podcast, by the way, recommended Cloud Cuckoo Land, which I ended up reading, and that was so good. She had so much praise for it, and I agree. Like, it was a really good book. It takes place over like a few different timelines, but they're all kind of connected by this one book, and that was pretty great. And then I actually took Andrea Mowry, I think it was in her newsletter, recommended the book Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, and I'm currently listening to that one, and that one's really good too. And I think once I finish that one, I'll kind of pick up A Court of Thorn and Roses again. So that's what I'm reading currently, or listening to, I should say. All right. So the next question is, gotta open my iPad back up. Oh, this is a fun one. Okay. So this one is, talk about your time out west and talk about how you got to where you are now. I'm not sure if that's exactly how the question was written, but that's how I transferred it to my iPad. So yeah, I have mentioned before that I've lived out west, and it's actually been a couple times that I have. So I guess I'm just gonna have to give you a little timeline of my last, I don't know, like 12 or 13 years maybe. So I grew up on like the east side of St. Paul. I lived there my whole life. And I always knew that I wanted to move to Colorado because I was like super into snowboarding in high school, and Afton Alps, which is just this little valley, just wasn't cutting it for me anymore. So I made the decision to move out to Colorado. I got accepted into CU, but their out-of-state tuition is bonkers. It's like, at the time it was $17,000 a semester, not including room and board, and there's just like no way that I could afford that. So I got my own studio apartment. It was my first time like moving out of the house and then just jumping into owning my own, or renting my own apartment and living alone. It was like in a different state, was a huge deal. And that was in Westminster, Colorado, if you're familiar. And I went to community college for like 2.5 years. And then I just wanted to focus on working for a little bit, because then I had moved to Boulder and I was living with a roommate, or a couple different roommates, and just having fun with my friends. When I was out there, I worked at Jamba Juice. That was my first job. And then I started working at Forever 21. And then I started working at a salon as a receptionist, and that was probably my favorite job that I ever had. And I met one of my best friends, Kayla, out there, and we're still best friends to this day, which is wonderful. And then I did end up going to CU for a semester, but then I had some different like family things going on back home, and I thought it was time to just like move back home. So I moved in with my dad for a couple years, and at this point I was working at H&M. I started in Colorado, and then I transferred to Mall of America out here. And after living with my dad for a couple of years, I moved to Minneapolis for a couple of years. And after a while in Minneapolis, I kind of just like, I love this city, but it seems like I always get to a point where I'm feeling like trapped, or like there's too many people and I can't get anywhere I want to go fast enough, and like crowded. I just feel crowded. And so I kind of had like a freak out moment and moved in with my sister and her family. I lived with them for, I I think it was like 6 months, and then Mitch and I decided to move out to Idaho, which I was really excited about because this was maybe like 5 or 6 years had gone by since I had moved back from Colorado, and I really missed the mountains, and I wanted to get like deep into the mountains. Like when I was in Colorado, it was like Denver, Boulder area, which is really cool, but that's not like in the mountains. And so Mitch got a job opportunity at a bike shop out in Victor, Idaho, if you're familiar. It's like on the back side of the Tetons. And so we moved out there. I worked at a coffee drive-through shop and like a home decor store, and it was so much fun. It was like, I don't know, I really miss it there. I would totally like move back if my family was able to come with and friends. One thing about living out there was it was really hard to get like home. I could either drive 18 hours or I could fly out of Jackson Hole, but it was just like always way too expensive for what my budget was. So it just wasn't easy to get out there and come back home and see friends and stuff. So after about a year, we moved back because Mitch got a job back here, and I ended up going back to H&M. And we lived in St. Paul for a year, and then we moved back to Minneapolis, and we lived there for 3 years. And then we started house hunting, and the housing prices were just like wild. And at the same time, I was kind of having that thing happen again where I was feeling crowded and just needed to get out. So we ended up moving to western Wisconsin in like a super cute little river valley town, and it's still like 30 minutes from the cities, so I still see my friends all the time. But I'm also just so close to nature here, and I love it. Like I'll be taking my dogs for walks, and there's just like deer walking through the neighborhoods. There's swans everywhere, a ton of swans, and I have shown a few footages of all the swans. We love looking for the swans, and like I was talking about in my last episode, it's kind of almost like a touristy town, and there's a marina, and like we go and look at the boats and the sailboats, and yeah, so I'm really happy with where I'm at in my life right now. Physically and mentally and emotionally too. Okay. Next question. What's my favorite childhood memory? And this question actually comes from my mom. Hi, Mom. And I thought about this one. I feel like I had a good childhood for sure. So it's kind of hard to choose what my favorite memory was, but I definitely think like summer going into 3rd grade specifically was a really good summer. My family, we took, I think it was like a 2-week road trip, which is kind of wild, to Banff, Canada. So we went through like North Dakota, Montana, and up into Canada, and that was just amazing. Like Banff is one of the most beautiful places in the world, and it was just a really nice time spent with my family too. Like obviously my sister and I probably fought a lot in the back of the car, but I don't know, that's just kind of part of the whole experience, I guess. And that same summer, so one of our dogs had passed away, Fletcher, and I remember I went to visit my grandparents, which was like maybe 3 hours away for like a week, I think. And when I came back was the first time I remember I cried happy tears, because I came home, I walked in through the front door, and I see my sister sitting at the top of the steps, and she's like, look what we got, but I couldn't see what we got. And then all of a sudden, like a little golden retriever puppy popped his head around her and I just started weeping because I was just so excited to have like a little puppy again. And that was Jasper. And so, yeah, just between that road trip and getting a new dog, like that was a really good summer. I think I tore my ligaments in my elbow that spring, I think, and I got my cast off that summer too, which is also very nice. That's another good segue into the next question, which is, can I introduce my pets? And I sure can. I have in the past before, but I'm always happy to do it again. I wonder if I can wake them up from their naps. So I have 2 golden retriever dogs. We got Kevin first, and then we realized that we wanted him to have a sibling to play with and to just kind of grow up with, and we wanted them to be similar in age so they have like the same energy levels throughout life instead of like having a senior dog and then getting a rambunctious puppy. Like we wanted them to be able to play with each other throughout their whole life. So we got Marshall, our second dog, and he's a little chaotic boy. We love them both so much. And then I've had a cat, Lou, since I lived in Colorado. My roommate got her when she was like a kitten. And then she ended up moving back home and I kept Lou, and I think she's like 11 or 12 years old now. I probably won't be able to introduce her because she's upstairs sleeping in a ray of sunlight. But she's doing great too. It's really fun. Like since we got the dogs as puppies, they grew up with Lou, and so our house, like they all just like get along and they take naps together and stuff. There's no like cat dog energy, and it's really nice. Let me see if I can get them to come over here. Hey Kevin, come here. I gotta show you something. Come here, Kevin. Good boys. Oh, Marshall's coming too. Okay, we got Kevin first. Come here, Kevin. Come here. Can you come up? Can you come up? Come on up. Good boy. Okay, so this is Kevin. Hi, Kevin. Yeah, and he's the beautiful boy. He's the older one. Hey, Kevin, can you look over there? What's over there? Say hi. Oh, yes. Okay. Oh, thank you. Now it's Marshall's turn. Marshall, can you come up? Come here. Yeah, we're going to let Marshall up. Come here, Marsh. Come on. Come on up. Good boy. And this is Marshall. Marshall, can you look over there? Look over there. Oh, yeah. He's the younger one. And they're both just like the snuggliest little boys. And they just love to cuddle and give hugs and kisses. And we just walk all over town. And it's a great time. Yeah. So those are the boys. And the last question of the day, just in time for my camera to die, is what are my other hobbies besides fiber crafts? And I do actually have quite a bit of other hobbies, more outdoor active ones. I love mountain biking. I love regular road biking. I just got a new bike actually, and I'm really excited to use it this summer. You probably already know that I cross-country ski in the winter, a lot of hiking, and I think this summer I'm gonna start playing tennis and maybe get into pickleball with my friends too. I'm really excited. So yes, I do have other hobbies. I love nature, hiking. I don't know, I could just keep going. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any like follow-up questions or other questions you have for me that I didn't cover, feel free to ask them in the description below and I'll certainly answer them for sure. In the meantime, I'm glad you stuck around for this long, and I hope you have a good rest of your week. If you're new here, welcome. Please consider subscribing and you won't miss out on any future episodes. And if you liked this, please hit the thumbs up button because that really helps me out. But in the meantime, I love you all. Have a lovely week. Bye!